hello, beautiful human. I forgot to make my tea. God damn it. I'm back in the U.S. Back in the U.S. I'm actually overdue to be back in the U.S. Hey. Back in the U.S. and my body is adjusting after 15 months in the Dominican Republic. 15 beautiful, hard, transformative months in the Dominican Republic. And I'm still going to make my tea, so I'm bringing that along with me. So I want to talk about being back in the U.S. Can we talk about like expatting and also that thing too? Because I think there's a lot of conversations about it, and there's nothing wrong if you can't travel. And then we're gonna also talk about like reconnecting to my why, and the fact that a lot of you who watch my live, support my work, are people who I've already engaged with. And for those who haven't engaged with, I'm going to bring you up to speed. But a lot of you have attended my workshops, my classes. And I have always been in this place of wanting to get the information that I teach and that I use out to folks. So that way we can all use this, right? And I had to reconnect to my why. So for those who don't know me, I am Lena Queen, licensed clinical social worker, clinical sexologist, integrative mind, body, spirit being the little s, the conscious awareness of your energy therapist. I'm an integrative therapist, and I'm an integrative therapist I'm a therapist and a person who has always married the relationship between our spirituality and our sexuality, period. Like, that's been me prior to the academic stuff. That's me as a person. And me as a professional did not want to stray from me as a person. And we already know doing this work in very oppressive, tight, narrow-minded, sex-negative ways, being a helping professional, a life coach, a healing professional, a person, period, showing up fully who you are as a sexual person, in your sexuality, being all of who you are, right? Not just like the act of being sexual. And then also being a spiritual person, a person who is connected to a higher sense of self. And outside of religious dogma, it may include religious dogma, but it really is about like your personal relationship to a conscious awareness of energy that is both collective, that is both cosmic, that is both you. And so for me in this work, I have journeyed through the pressure of not showing up fully, right? Because one, it wasn't safe, right? I've been in this is my 21st year doing this work personally and professionally. And I've done this work in this place where it has been very shaming to do this work, right? Because people expected my work to be pornographic, and pornographic in the sense of adult sexual material that somehow was not going to be appropriate to the people that I was talking about. And so being able to navigate this work, to do this work in this place, and to also show up as my authentic, quirky, erotic self. Like, there's always been this energy about me that people have always been like, well, what is that? And then also too, how can that be in a dark skinned Black girl, right? Without them wanting to put all these sexual stereotypes on me, like that always informed my work. So being in Dominican Republic, all that shit came up. All that shit came up. Dominican Republic, one, yes, I was in the North Coast. Sosua is where I started, which is a beach town that is known for its tourism, its water sports. It's also known for sex tourism, right? Some of us hear conversations about passport bros. That's more contemporary, but honestly, there have been U.S. veterans that go to the Dominican Republic that have retired in the Dominican Republic, and are part of they have retired there. And so, I was there in Sosua. And Sosua is close to Puerto Plata, which is the first port in which the Dominican Republic actually started their tourism. Like, tourism is the biggest industry that the Dominican Republic has, in addition to its agricultural, right? Coffee, cocoa, and tobacco, right? And when you think about from a Black liberation perspective, it is one of the first ports in which enslaved persons and colonization in the West occurred. And so, and Spain was the European country that started that. So anyway, I'm in North Coast, and so North Coast, Sosua, Puerto Plata, Cabarete, which I all recommend folks visit. And in the Dominican Republic, no one gave a goddamn who I was, what I did for a living. Like, I wasn't there for that. I was there to visit my bro and my sis, who had a restaurant in the Dominican Republic, and they was like, Queen, come for 2 weeks, and my 2 weeks turned into 15 months. So again, I went there for a reprieve. I went there because if you've been following my journey, you also know that the personal is professional. And so I use my personal, professional, and my personal narrative and my professional narrative, because we also cannot show up in this work across from our clients and not humanize our own selves. If we are supposed to be creating the container for our clients, then what we can't do is be a system or a tool of oppression without doing our own work. And so my why is always about the self and others, because they are not in the rooms by themselves. And being a person, a Black person of African American descent, whose ancestors survived, because I'm here, U.S. chattel slavery, the last thing I am going to do is act like that these invisible, what I call the default, societal and sexual assumptions and expectations don't exist. And so how can I show up as a sex positive, pleasure affirming person and professional and not act like that I too am not in this room? It's not about censoring, it's about skill. And that's what makes us a professional, not because of who we like, our acronyms, but it's about the skill that we have. And in the Dominican Republic, it wasn't about the skill that I had, it was a skill that I could apply. Like, who am I as a person? When Dominican folks are some of the most beautiful, aesthetically beautiful people on the fucking planet. Again, it is a lot of sex tourism as a major export. So sex and sexuality is also evident in a way that doesn't look like Vegas. It's evident in a way that's culture, that sensuality, right? The sense of embodiment is in everybody of every age, and not always necessarily for the purpose of sex work, but for the purpose of just like simple, like erotic embodiment, like understanding the energy of desirability without commodifying the sex. And so it was jarring where in normally a place I would be in the US, now I felt very much so outside of that place, because it really had me thinking about, how did I carry my erotic energy? Like, how did I carry, and do I really carry it for this sense of self, or am I really carrying it as this performative piece? I think also too, to be in this place where it was beautiful. I just can't tell you beautiful that it was, but it was also uncomfortable. it was uncomfortable because it was also about not comparing my desirability for people against or with women, particularly with people in general who were there because that was their job, that was their work, was really almost like modern day quintessence to sell a dream. And also to see these individuals, folks outside of work, and to know when it was like on and off. And so like I am walking around, I am engaging, I am living in a place where I really had to sit with myself about who I am. And so everything that is skill, everything that I had to apply, I had to embody. Those 15 months was like an embodiment journey. An embodiment journey that outside of the U.S. and its labor and the rush, I don't know if I would have had the opportunity to fully immerse myself in. So I'm very, very thankful for that experience. And so coming back to connecting to my why was like, why the hell am I doing this that I'm doing? And also too, there were things when you have to look at like, are you benefiting from you the way other people are benefiting from you? And I really had to ask that question because when I arrived, more people were benefiting from me than I was benefiting from myself. And if you look back at my Instagram, you'll see that I'm very clear. And you can like about like the professional journey, the business not doing well, you know, and then the business doing well, but I'm not doing well. And so really being able to see how my wellness and my embodiment was attached to my practice, Journey Wellness. And Journey Wellness was telling me that it had taken on an identity of its own that had to be outside of myself. And so even as a business professional, as a business owner, if your business and you have the same identity, you need to work that out because your business identity cannot be your personal identity. And it sounds very like, duh, Queen, we know this, like you know this, until you get caught up in the marketing, the business day-to-day operations, right? Making the revenue marks, right? Like hitting payroll, right? Being able to make sure your family and friends are okay. Like it sounds good until you put it in practice, and then you realize the health of your business all of a sudden becomes the health of you. And that's where I was. And I was like, oh shit. And so of course that impacted my ability to be a good lover, to be a lover to myself, to have, when I talk about lovership, right, the embodiment of who we are and our care and concern of self and others, like both sexually and non-sexually. Oh, my lovership was a struggle. I did not have a sex drive. I did not want to be touched. I was disconnected from my sexiness, and my sexiness is my barometer. It's my temperature. Like, how do I take my temperature of how well or not is like, how sexy does Queen feel? And it's not about, and sexiness in that sense of being desired by self, not necessarily by others. And too often times we think, especially as we age, right, we are looking at others to look at our sense of sexiness and self-worth, and then we're gauging our sexiness and self-worth off of the responses that other people are giving to us, and that puts us outside of our power. And so I could not be in the Dominican Republic where people, particularly U.S. Black men who were down there for the purpose of sex tourism, and to look at them as a way of gauging my sexiness, one that's heteronormative as fuck, and I'm queer, and so, but I was socialized as a heterosexual person, and so like I still had to be mindful of like what were the things inside of me that I was still struggling. was I struggling to disconnect from, but it was still impacting me, right? Like I knew intellectually, but embodiment wise, there was still this like, why the fuck does this even matter? And so I had to be really self-aware, consciously, lovingly, compassionately self-aware about my desirability. That was really about my relationship to self. And so my work is about the relationship to self. And sexual distress, which is defined by Dr. Shamika Thorpe, right? Any negative emotions that one feels in reference to being able to experience sexual pleasure, and I'm paraphrasing, but like being able to experience sexual pleasure. So those negative emotions are like sexual shame, sexual anxiety, right? Self-doubt, worry, like those things that prevent us from showing up in our lovership. I was like, oh shit, I was like experiencing and naming the things. And so 3 weeks after that, I met my lover. 3 weeks after being in Dominican Republic, I met my lover. And that shit was amazing and challenging all at the same time. I wrote Healing the Erotic Self because I was finally ready, and I know like, why are you jumping? But I'm not jumping because like I finally started this book 2 years ago. First of all, started 2 years ago, and knew I did not want the book to be too academic. And so meeting my lover again is, our relationships are a reflection of self. And so when I met him and looking at myself in my mirror, my reflection of self, I was like, I had to shed what academia had done to me. I had there was a certain rigidness that ends up happening. There's certain disconnect where all of a sudden I couldn't connect to people. And so in my writing, I wanted to make sure whether you were a professional person or someone who was just seeking to lessen their sexual distress, that it was practical for you. And in my relationship with my lover, my sexual distress, I had to work through putting myself in a position where I can communicate to a primarily Spanish-speaking individual who had different awareness and understandings about sexuality and agency and autonomy. Not that it wasn't affirming, but it was just different. And I had to be able to put myself in a place to communicate, sexual communication, to communicate to him that wasn't going to cause shame to either one of us, right? Because he's a very, very tender person. And so it's skills. Healing your lovership is skills. And so there was just this overlapping of my professional self and my personal self and my erotic embodiment all showing up. And I'm sharing that because it's probably all showing up for you too, right? And so you're doing this scrolling, right? You're looking for information. You have tons of books. You go to the events, or you can't wait for the events to come back. And like, you're trying to be a better lover. And so like, how are you going to be a better lover if you're not really aware of all of the ways that your lived experience is showing up, which is what the erotic self is. The erotic self shows 8 different areas of our embodiment that shows up in ourselves. Our relationship to our bodies, our relationship to our behavior. Think about respectability and desirability, right? So again, I'm in the Dominican Republic, and I'm being mindful to not dress for others, to not do something where I'm trying to be in not necessarily competition, but I'm trying to show my self-worth and my desirability. I wasn't there for that. I was there to heal. And so being able to be in this place where I'm understanding, like, again, my erotic self, and that's what I want you to be able to name for yourself, is like, what is your erotic self? And so I'm actually going to go through and look for all of them because I'm going to also honor my neurospiciness, and I'm on live and y'all are going to watch this later, and I don't want to give myself any pressure to perform either. So 8 areas of the erotic self is your relationship to your body, your relationship to your behavior. And again, think about relationship to your body, right? Think about your relationship to touch, your relationship to your senses, including your relationship to your intuition, right? Think about your relationship to pleasure, power, pain, your agency and autonomy, your ability to make decisions, your ability to act on the decisions that you make. That's all your relationship to your body. Think about your relationship to your behavior. That's the next area of the erotic self, right? And like how your relationship to your body and behavior show up when you think about everybody. You know, most of us have went to some type of family event, right? In the U.S., there is Thanksgiving, and we recognize the colonization and the harm. We recognize that was about the celebration of genocide, the genocide of Native folks here on Turtle Island, but also recognizing how too it is a day of family and not also a day of mourning. So it's a day of mourning and also a day of remembrance and also a day of family for African American folks. It has a different particular meaning for those of us who have survived U.S. chattel slavery in our ancestry, in our lineage. But think about behavior, right? And showing up to any gathering. Are you showing too much skin? Are you not showing too much skin, right? Who are you dating? Who are you not dating? Your relationship status, your behavior about desirability, being loved, right? Being fucking mad because parenting being a skill and not necessarily just a personhood, and your relationship to your parents, chosen or not. And all those things actually showing up. Erotic energy, your relationship to desirability, your relationship to racism, and anti-blackness, because what you cannot do in this world is think that somehow you are not informed, your desirability is not informed by anti-blackness, is not informed by your race or ethnicity, is not informed by racism, right? Policies, procedures, privilege, and all the things that come underneath of it. And so that informs your erotic self. And again, I'm a dark-skinned U.S. black woman in the Dominican Republic, and we already understand how the Dominican Republic, the government, treats Haitian Dominican folks and Haitians in general, and all of that stuff is, right? Sensual pleasure, your relationship to sensual pleasure, again, your senses and pleasure. And your senses does include your intuition. So I always say 6th sense, not just the 5. Your enthusiastic consent. Are you engaging in something that you enthusiastically want to, and is it an outward expression of that emotion? That's the next one. And then your relationship both to self and others. And so like how in this, and the book is only 72 pages. The ebook is 57 pages. And the print book is going to be 72 pages because it's a guide and journal. So that was the other thing. I have several workbooks. I looked at several books, and I really wanted something that even for my clients that people can work out of. And I am like the type of therapist that likes to process. So I'm giving you information, processing questions, because I want you to be able to not just read this and be like, oh, I need to think about this. I want you to read it, think about it, and then be like, shit, how do I actually apply this? Like, where in your healing are you ready for the work, right? And when I think about the work is like your conscious, intentional, compassionate sense of presence, right? And I break down presence as in awareness, effort, and intention. That's what the work is. And so when I created this workbook, I wanted this guide and journal, because I didn't want to call it a workbook either, because why? We also have a socialization when it comes to workbooks, which is I'm going to do the activities and I'm going to put it to the side. And I want you to be able to look at this book as in like I'm going to this book to check in, because when I'm journaling, you're doing your other healing practices. I want you to be able to have a framework in which you are you have to guide yourself with, because we are not taught. There's a gap because we don't have comprehensive sex education in the U.S. that we are not taught to be home to our bodies. We're not taught to be in relationship to ourselves, mind, body, and energy, mind, body, and spirit, right? The conscious awareness of your energy. And so if you're not taught how to be in relationship to it, all the practices, all the therapy, all the things that you're doing are not going to be integrated, are not going to become embodied. And when I think about what's the disconnect for people being able to transformatively heal, to heal in a place that they feel actually safe, they actually trust themselves, they actually feel connected to themselves, that they can experience pleasure and joy without shame. It's the embodiment piece. It's the integrative piece. It's really great that we're talking about somatics, right? But if you don't understand the intention behind somatics, there's always going to be a disconnect. And so somatic work could possibly become something that is not integrative or embodied, because you're learning to intellectualize, and intellectualization is not a bad thing if that's the way we learn, but you're only learning the information, you're not learning the how to apply, right? And so what I get is, Queen, I know all of these things, but what I want from you is how to. And so the workbook, the guide, I'm not calling it a fucking workbook, is about how to, right? And then it gives you spaces. Ebooks are different from also paperback. Paperback, we have something in our hand, right? Like we can go ahead and write it down, right? Ebooks, most likely ebooks out of practice, what are you going to do? You're probably going to have your journal with you, and as you're going through the ebook. And so while the ebook absolutely has fillable spaces in there and some spaces for you to be able to like print, and if you wanted to print it off and then have reflection notes on it, absolutely. But what I also know too is I always talk about capability, like how are you going to process and receive information, our learning styles. And so thinking about your learning styles and how this book was designed, I wanted to make sure that regardless of your learning style, that you could apply it to yours, right? And that's the wonderful part about like you knowing yourself, is like you have to know how you learn and receive and process information. So in Shift, right, when I talk about the practice of creating safety and self-trust, right, in yourself, right, that integrative practice, ground, center, nurture, affirm, the one thing I recognize is like, how are you going to process, how am I going to process and teach information in which you're able to learn and apply. And so I think about that when I think about designing anything that I actually do. And so, because it's not enough just to put out good information if the information cannot be understood, cannot be applied, cannot be repeated, right? If you can't replicate it, and it can't be shared, right? So like that part was actually important to me. And so but like the 15 months that I had there, like looking at my lived experience, both sexually and non-sexually, trying to create an experience, not just a book, but an experience, right? I wanted to make sure that folks could actually get that. So being in the Dominican Republic helped me reconnect to my why. Being also in back in the U.S. helped me connect to my why. And so being back in the U.S., you need help with anything? Being back in the U.S., this was not about like, are you sad to be back? Hell no, I'm not sad to be back. Why? Because one, I have the privilege of going back, right? I can go back and forth. And when I'm back with my babies, and I miss my daughter, my granddaughter, like nobody's business. And so being back in the U.S. is not about anything being bad, right? Being in Dominican Republic also showed me like exactly what my quality of life should look like, and not necessarily about a tropical island, but what my quality of life should feel like. I should say look like, but should feel like, right? What my quality of life in my everyday should look like. And so it really had to go back to also to connecting to my why, which is this, doing the work that I do, and then being able to share it this way. So Healing Your Erotic Self, the book, and then I have a guided meditation, because it's the other thing I recognized too was being able to do this work. You still have to get through the hurdles that are you. So your thoughts, your thoughts, and I don't mean just your thoughts, but your self-limiting beliefs. You okay to make noise? Your self-limiting beliefs, over there, because one, Adderall, she always, sorry, our cats, right? I got a little bitty tiny cat that likes to eat the food of the big cat. And so I had to separate them last night. Anyway, so you have to be able to, I got the guided meditation, because if you also seen my journey, I became a certified hypnotherapist because I was struggling with automatic negative thoughts in a place I had never before. And so and then also surviving suicidality, the ideations, active ideations. I had to think about what were the strategies that was going to really help get to the source, which were my subconscious beliefs. And so while MDMR and brain spotting are there, to me, they weren't accessible. And what was accessible was hypnotherapy. And so not only did I try hypnotherapy, shout out to my good sis Rachel Johnson, who is not only my hypnotherapist, but also my trainer. I became a certified hypnotherapist because the results I received in hypnotherapy was transformative. And hypnotherapy is about quieting the conscious mind, the waking mind, so that way you can talk to the subconscious mind, right? The mind that really is informing all of our motivations, that's informing all of our whys, that really is the recorder of both this life and past lives. And so I really want to be able to quiet my waking thoughts so I could talk to the subconscious thoughts, because I really wanted to get to that source, really to talk to myself, to be like, no. So the guided meditation is developed out of a hypnotherapy practice to really help you dissolve sexual anxiety and self-doubt, so that way you can move towards a space of sexual confidence. And it's transformative. And so the other thing too was accessibility, right? I also see, I think my daughter did research for the state of Delaware. There is one therapist for every 350 people in the state of Delaware, right? And even less for Black and Brown, right? And so Black and Brown therapists and folks. And so when you think about accessibility too, when you think about the necessary skill that it actually takes, people don't have the time, the attention, or the resources. And so this book became very much so important about how to make things accessible. The guided meditation became about how to make things accessible, because what I realized is that there's this perpetual state of burnout that the U.S. is in. And absolutely abroad, because since I am U.S. based, I'm going to talk about what my awareness is of U.S. based services. And so knowing that we are burnt out, knowing that your everyday lived experience, you are probably not carving out the minutes that you need for yourself, it became important to figure out how to integrate practices into your life that you could do that. And here's what I want you to do. I actually want you to do that. I actually want you to do a time study on yourself. From the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. And I want you to micro-task the time study. I mean, from the time that you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing that you do when you wake up? Does your thoughts go to your day, or do you grab your phone? Right? Do you say anything of gratitude, or do you go into automatic, like I got to distress myself from the uncomfortability that I'm feeling on the inside? Or do you stay connected to the uncomfortability and you ask yourself, how do I take care of myself in this moment? And do you stay connected to taking care of yourself throughout the day? Most of us don't. Why? Because there's so many other things that are present in our face that we actually have to be able to take care of. So Shift, which the book also goes into, is about being able to say, like, how do you take care of yourself in moments of distress or discomfort? And like, how can you bring that more to the forefront, not of taking care of yourself, right? So that way there is self-trust that you develop in, like, I can take care of myself and I don't have to distraction and disassociation as protective sources, absolutely, positively. And also, how can you put yourself in a different position, because what you're trying to do ultimately is to be a better lover to yourself and to other people. So I used to get very lost in I used to get very lost in the distress part of it, that again, I had to reconnect to my why. And reconnecting to my why was about being a better lover for myself, to myself. Because we all love, right? We all want to be better lovers. We all seek love, whether it's romantic love, platonic love, familial love. Love is the currency in which most of us, right, are moving towards thriving for, trying to thrive for, or strive for, right? And so if love is the currency that we want, then how do we become better lovers? And so, how do we become better lovers, sexually and non-sexually? I think the other thing too about my work is not just about orgasms, which is again a very U.S. centered way of looking at things, that everything is supposed to be about an orgasm. And now if we're talking about an orgasm in the sense of ecstatic delight of the senses, I am all for it. But if we're talking about orgasm as a sexual performance, then I'm not all for it, because it puts a lot of pressure on the outcome versus the experience to orgasm. Shout out to Dr. Donna Oriowo. So if you're looking for something very specific about orgasming, she has a course and she has a retreat, Plan to Orgasm, and you should actually check that out. Because I also send some of my clients to that too, because the other thing about this too is, like, how are you, we gotta collaborate. You're going to have other places where you seek resources. And so this is going to give you, the book is going to guide you. And I also have resources in the back of Sexologists and folks that I recommend to heal your erotic self. And so one of the things that is also important too is, like, yeah, we're all seeking to be better lovers. We're all seeking to have better sex. But if I focus on just having better sex by itself, a lot of people's anxiety is going to increase. People are going to be activated and triggered in certain ways that are going to feel unsafe for them. And so the book is informed and trauma informed about safety, and being able to challenge and provide you with ways of processing things in a very safe way, and then being able to go and find those resources that you need to find with the meditations that you can use in order to help you feel more certain, feel more safe about it. And so what else does the book actually have? And the book is for, you already know, I am queer, inclusive, centered, Black centered, but this book is for all of us. Whether you're heterosexual, whether you're queer, whether you're cis, or whether you're trans, this book is for all of us. I hope you do find yourself in this book. It was written very intentionally to be a place where you think about your relationship with sex and pleasure, that you think about your relationship to the erotic. I use Audre Lorde's manifesto uses of the erotic. And to me, that goes with the currency of love. Like, how is our love informed, and what is our love informed by? And so it's really going to help you process, be accountable, and own your healing in ways that is going to transform your lovership. It is. And I hope it's something that you'll continue to stay engaged with me with. Know that I am going to continue. I do have the monthly support group shift, which is about supporting our lovership. That's every third Sunday of the month. I'm going to keep that into the new year. Womanism Sacred Circle is going to be coming back in the new year. February is Sexual Healing Month, and so I'll be having more specific conversations about sexual healing. I'll be highlighting other sexologists, sex educators that have resources that you can use. I also feel like too, because accessibility is something, not everybody is coming to therapy or coaching, and so I'm going to really highlight how you can do this work self-paced, one-on-one. I did a lot of this work outside of therapy. I'm a therapist who did this to work outside of therapy. Being a therapist gave me access to a lot of things, a lot of knowledge, people, but I did this work majorly out of therapy. I did this with what they call alternative healing arts, which for a lot of non-white folks, they are indigenous arts. Healing arts. And for those folks who are not melanated, it's always about understanding your relationship to it and always honoring the indigenous in which these healing arts actually come from. Otherwise, we continue to come from narrative, like, then we don't continue to honor ourselves if we can't like honor like where these arts come from, where the healing arts come from, and like what our relationship to these arts are, and being able to do that in a way that's not just about commodifying things. What else do I want y'all to know? I think that's really about it. I think if you're looking to understand your worth outside of your labor to others, if you are looking to heal your lovership, to become a better lover to yourself and to others, if you are looking for a sex life that is experience focused and not just orgasmic focused, then I got the resources for you. Check the link in my bio. All 3 of the resources are available: the guided meditation, Healing Your Erotic Energy, the ebook, Healing the Erotic Self, and the free resource, Shift, a Self-Liberation Practice. So literally, you don't even have to wait until 2024 to revamp your healing practices, to move into the next things. Like, there are resources that are accessible, ready for you right now. And I've done my parts. Shift Sundays. And so thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what other topics can we talk about on our Shift Sundays, and we can kind of move from there. Until next time, peace and love.